Like when they'd shut everything down, it's like 3 months from now, people are going to be losing their minds. They're going to be out on the streets protesting to get rid of the masks, and they're going to be out at ball games again. I was like, that's not right. I think it'll take a year. We're like a year and a half in, and half the country's still like, well, you know, what if this just kind of continues? Like, all right, I guess. Like the amount of...
The f*** are you talking about? No one who is like pro-vaccine and pro-mandates has been like, I also want the pandemic to go on indefinitely. They've been like, oh, we have a solution. We have a solution to be able to curb and or eradicate this pandemic. Why don't we do that? And then the other half of the population was like, nah. Oh, by the way, the last time Ben Shapiro was, I think, on the Joe Rogan podcast was quite a long time ago. And that wasn't the one where he was just being just horrifyingly transphobic for a very long time. But in the next iteration that Ben Shapiro came in, he was, you know, still being ghoulish, still being transphobic. I think he even started mixing up his like own gender, like the way he was saying it was even, he was fucking up his own shit. Like he was trying to be a bigot, but he was like he, she, he, and he was like mixing all this kind of stuff up. Either way,
I'm really fascinated by this decision of Facebook to change the name of Facebook to Meta and to the Metaverse, which I think people are just gonna they're gonna like they're gonna realize that this is a crazy idea. That you're going to give your life to some sort of augmented or virtual reality world that's created by a guy who's involved in this company whose algorithms are sowing the seeds of distrust and hate. But now...
Oh no, this is going to be one of those ones where I agree almost entirely. Well, not that people aren't going to do it. I think people are going to sign up right away. I think it's like, it's a done deal. But yeah, it is. It's wild.
We're going to fucking let him take over what you see and feel because you're going to have a new company. And this new company is going to be virtually reality based where he's literally, he reenacted a scene from Black Mirror.
Yeah. Well,
which is unironically.
I know. And you know what makes me a little sad? I think that it's going to happen.
You think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that you and I are of a different generation, dude. I think there are a lot of kids who...
Here's the good news, everyone. The one thing that no one's really accounting for is the price barrier to all this. So as scary as the fear-mongering might sound, it's like, oh, you're all going to sign up for the metaverse, and soon every person will be plugged into VR, and that's just going to be your lives now. At the end of the day, to get yourself an Oculus, that alone is going to be like $500. You're also going to need a very high-end computer. It's got a very powerful graphics card, all that kind of stuff. It's not like there's, like, I know Google Cardboard did a really good job of trying to make VR accessible for everybody who has a cell phone kind of stuff, but the metaverse isn't just like right around the corner. Every single person is suddenly going to be doing business in the metaverse.
Are growing up in Fortnite world and spend a lot, and I think the pandemic really accelerated this. There are a lot of people who lived online for the entire pandemic, and so for people like me and for people like my parents, not seeing other humans for a long time was actually quite painful and terrible. Like, we actually did want to get out and be with the community and see friends and do that sort of stuff. What if you spend your entire life from the time you're little...
Wait, what the hell is the metaverse? Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should give everyone a quick background if they don't understand this. Hold on. Okay, let me explain what it is.
It is time for us to adopt a new company brand to encompass everything that we do, to reflect who we are and what we hope to build. I am proud to announce that starting today, our company is now Meta. Imagine you put on your glasses or headset and you're instantly in your home space. It has parts of your physical home recreated virtually, it has things that are only possible virtually, and it has an incredibly inspiring view of whatever you find most beautiful.
All right, hopefully that clears everything up. Don't need any more background.
Kid interacting with screens. What if those screens are getting increasingly sophisticated so that they are interacting with you in ways that humans would? What if you get to be whatever, like, we're a society, we were just talking about this, where you get to be whatever you want to be? What if there's a world where you actually can be and everybody sees you the way you want to be seen? Would you rather live there where you're like rich and good looking and everybody likes you? Or would you rather live in the real world where you're disconnected from all of that and you end up with like Ready Player One world? I think
it's kind of like, it's like that movie with the robots and the pills, you know? And you take the red pill, that, you know the movie, right? You all know the movie I'm talking about. Zardos? Yeah, it's like Zardos.
It's going to happen.
It's
as long as it can become indistinguishable from reality, which it will be able to be. It's going to take time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. If you go back and look at Pong, which was the first game that I ever saw when I was a child, it's ridiculous. It's like a white ball that bounces across, and you have a straight
two
line.
paddles, yep.
That's a paddle. And it's the dumbest game that you could never convince a child to play today. They'd be like, get the fuck out of here with that stupid game.
The Oculus Quest Advanced All-in-One Virtual Reality Headset, 128 gigabytes, only $300. I mean, that is a much better price point. I will agree with you there. However, $300 is still prohibitively expensive to the average American. You got to remember the average American is what, $400 away from their next like emergency. And then on top of that, you have to buy the games. But I will agree with you. An Oculus Quest 2 does make the whole thing cheaper.
I can go play fucking Halo, right? But back then, when I was a child, that was a big deal. If you just go in the future from now, what they have available now, these
$300 on a
video
Facebook account,
graphics,
too high,
the
way too
Unreal
high.
Engine, and then move yourself 20 years in the future. Yeah, it's going to be indistinguishable.
And the AI is getting better and better in terms of being able to imitate human behavior, in terms of being able to innovate on its own.
And haptic feedback suits and all these different things and all these video games.
So haptic feedback suits, if anyone here hasn't read Ready Player One or Ready Player One 2, or I'm sure Ready Player One 3, which is coming out too, it's basically you'll be wearing a suit that gives you feeling. So it'll make little vibrations or pressure feels, so it actually feels as if something in the digital world is touching you.
Games that they have that emulate sports. They're getting so close. When you watch these basketball games, and the UFC has a game, when you watch these the players, the fighters move around, like, God, it's so close. It's not quite there, but they're getting better and better with each iteration, and it's just a matter of time.
And what I wonder is if we are innovating ourselves, and when it comes to this stuff, if we're innovating ourselves out of existence as a civilization.
But don't you think that's probably where this goes, no matter what?
No, I think then the barbarians come to the gate. I think that's what happens.
Really?
Because the real world still exists. So if you innovate an entire generation of people, and let's just take this on the most baseline demographic level, none of them get married, none of them have babies. In 2 generations, this ain't gonna matter. You're gonna have a good time.
Of course. It always comes down to the births. I mean, of all the implications that like actual AI, the threat that poses to humanity, the potential eventual large-scale war whenever humanity invents real AI that is actually conscious, and then has to deal with the idea of, well, we would have to merge with it eventually, because if we don't, it'll become far more intelligent than we could ever imagine. So we have to merge with AI in order to temper and control it. And then a lot of people will say, well, that sounds completely foreign. We won't be human anymore. We'll become some other species, and I don't want that. And so then, of course, that could break out in this massive, large-scale global war if we can make it far enough to even achieve these kind of things. All very large existential questions, you know? But at the end of the day, comes down to the eggs. It's all about the eggs.
Time in the virtual reality, and then there are going to be no babies to carry this
what
on,
the
and the only people on
vulnerability is?
Earth are going to be religious Jews, religious Catholics, and religious Muslims, and that's it.
The vulnerability lies in the power grid.
That sounds like heaven to Ben Shapiro, does it? Well, except for, of course, the Muslims. If you get rid of the Muslim part, that would basically be his ideal world. That would be the Judeo-Christian dream come manifest. This seems like something that he should want.
The power grid is so vulnerable that if someone just detonated the power grid, all this stuff stops, and then you have no life. Your life is completely, you've invested it completely in this augmented world, this virtual world. But this virtual world, all you have to do is pull the plug, and it's out. And it's out for millions of people. It's like the equivalent of dropping a nuclear bomb on a culture. Like if you really all live inside of a computer system, some sort of
It's virtual reality. Yeah, no, that's right.
Like, okay, I get where their fears are coming from. I don't think they understand the depth of how far VR technology has come. I mean, it's unbelievably impressive. Don't get me wrong, especially if you have a friend who's got like an HTC. All of a sudden, you're like, wow, like it's pretty nutty that it feels like almost 1-to-1 you're moving in this. But at the end of the day, it's still very cumbersome to have this heavy, big thing on top of you. They've eliminated the cord problem with these new ones, but at the end of the day, there's a bunch of cords running around. account. You need a large room to be able to do this stuff in. Most people don't have an entire spare room that's just like an empty space so they can run around in it and be in the real VR world. There's still a lot of obstacles to having this be so mainstream that it poses a threat to general society.
And what I fear is that when you do that to a civilization, it's basically the equivalent of you bring in a wild animal and you put it in a cage for a long time, and now you can't release it back in the wild, right? It's going to get eaten. What happens to you as a civilization? Right? What happens if you've taken an entire generation of people, told them that their entire life exists online, they don't have to interact with other humans, they don't have to...
No, they're talking about the metaverse. They're talking about Facebook's new proposal. Mark Zuckerberg has come forward and said that Facebook is no longer going to be Facebook, it's going to be Meta. And what the idea is he's going to pool all of his different properties, WhatsApp, Instagram, all of that. He's going to pool them into what he's calling the Metaverse. He's going to make a lot of them become VR, and everyone will interact with each other in this VR world. As part of having a Facebook account, you also have a VR avatar, which you then can use to go to meetings, to play games in, all this kind of stuff. He basically invented VR chat, and he rebranded it and called it Meta. That's what he did.
Have to interact in human ways with other humans. And then there's like an entire other Earth out there that isn't doing any of this. Right? By the way, China's not doing this. Right?
No.
China's banning it.
Yeah.
China's banning it. China's saying you're not allowed to go online certain days of the week if you're a kid. Right? We're going to ban the kind of stuff that you can see. So in the long run, which civilization is going to be more durable? The one that actually understands the vulnerabilities of human nature, or the one that says we're going to use those vulnerabilities to make you feel...
I love this something that could just be a fun discussion. It's like, hey, Ben, you're coming on the show. Do you want to talk about VR? Yeah, cool. All right. It'll be pleasant, right? We're not going to bring up a lot of weird things like you normally do. It's like, no. I basically, if we're going to talk about VR, I just want to bring up the fact that that is definitely going to decline birth rates, which is pretty serious. And then also, what about the war with China, the inevitable war with China? So we should also talk about how they're actually getting a leg up on us in this regard. That seems like relatable, right?
Objectively happier. I think I'm amazed at the level of conditioning. Like, here's what killed me about the pandemic, honestly. Like, what killed me? The level of conditioning that it took in order to rejigger how people think was so low. It shocked the hell out of me. It really shocked me. I was talking to my business partner, Jeremy Boring, about this, and early on in the pandemic, he was like, people aren't going to stand for this. Like, when they'd shut everything down, it's like 3 months from now, people are going to be losing their minds. They're going to be out on the streets protesting to get rid of the masks, and they're going to be out at ball games again. I was like, that's not right. I think it'll take a year. We're like a year and a half in, and half the country's still like, well, what if this just kind of continues? Like, all right, I guess. Like, the amount of...
The fuck are you talking about? No one who is like pro-vaccine and pro-mandates has been like, I also want the pandemic to go on indefinitely. They've been like, oh, we have a solution. We have a solution to be able to curb and or eradicate this pandemic. Why don't we do that? And then the other half of the population was like, nah. And by the way, the anti-mask crowd, the anti-vax crowd, they've been very loud, very vocal, out on the streets protesting, breaking mandates, you name it.
Dependency that was bred by people saying, just go back to your house. And people be like, human beings are really adaptable. And this is something that Brett Weinstein and Heather Harding talk about, right? That's our superpower. We're super duper adaptable.
Yeah.
So we're super adaptable.
To our own detriment.
Sometimes to our own detriment. So if we change our social circle.
Like, okay, what if your city was being bombed and all of a sudden an ordinance is said, like when the Germans were bombing the UK, and then all of a sudden everyone has to go underground because they don't want to get killed by bombs coming down on them. Like, are you thinking in that instance that everyone is suddenly complying? You're just like, I'm just astounded that everyone is listening to these directives to stand underneath the building so that they apparently think they're going to die from these bombs. We don't know where the bombs land. They can land anywhere. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to have a proximity to you. It's really, is it worth the risk? Is it worth changing everything we do in order to just be underneath ground for a little while?
Circumstances radically in a way that's unhealthy for us. And we are now interacting with technologies that were built to take advantage of our lizard brain. Yeah. Then what happens when there are people who are just not engaging in the same, they're not playing the same game that we are, right? We're essentially drugging ourselves. Robert Nozick is the libertarian philosopher. He talks at one point about what he calls the experience machine. It's the thought experiment. And the experience machine is basically VR. He's writing this in early 1960s. He says, what if there was a machine where you could plug into it, you'd feel the illusion of choice, you'd feel as though your choices had some sort of significance, and it would give you the dopamine hit that you get in regular life. Would you plug into it or would you not?
Right.
And his theory was you wouldn't plug into it because you still want to feel like your life has real-world consequences. But what if everybody you know is in that experience machine? then you're the one who gets left out if you're not
What
in the
is
experience
real
machine.
world? What is
Right.
real world? I mean, that's what the problem is.
What is
that
real world?
analogy
What
was
is real world?
created before
What is
the
real world?
sophistication of computer
What is
systems
real world?
has reached the point now where you can look at it 20 years from now and you kind of get an understanding of where it's going to be. When you're dealing with what's possible now, I don't think you're going to be able to stop people from doing it because I think it's going to be so overwhelmingly addictive. You look at how many people are just addicted to looking at their Instagram.
Yep.
It's so
TikTok.
simple.
Yeah.
It's nothing. I mean, it's nothing. The dopamine hit you get off of this little phone, it's minimal, but people are completely all in on it.
Yep. And I think that I do wonder if there's going to be, and I wonder what you think about this, if there's going to be a bifurcation in the same way there's been a bifurcation about so many issues between the people at the top of sort of the elite spectrum and the rest of the population, where the people at the elite spectrum are
the
making
ones who
the
pay you?
metaverse, but their kids aren't actually in the metaverse.
Right. Like Steve Jobs didn't let his kid use an iPad.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on the internet. My kids are 7, 5, and 1. They're not allowed. We don't have the TV on in our house. My kids don't watch TV. Right? My kids don't get internet access until they're like 18. Like, that is not a thing I want.
18?
They can be out of my house
They're
and they can
going
get
to
internet.
rebel.
They're going to be social pariahs in high school, that's for sure. I don't think that one's going to last. Also, Ben, I'm assuming when you say, yeah, my kids don't have any form of entertainment, it's because our many maids are the ones who entertain them. That's probably what our caretakers are their entertainment, okay?
They're going to do drugs. They're going to be in the street. The kids are going to turn tricks.
Well,
it's going to be a real problem. It's going to be a problem.
That's a pretty wild ride you took me on there, Joe. That's really upsetting.
That's what I do.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
that was. We went straight from my kids aren't watching Coco Melon to they're turning tricks in the streets
Turning
of
tricks
Florida.
is such a
Wow,
great
that was-
term. It sounds so cute for what it actually is.
Yeah.
You know, it's a terrible thing,
It's-
but it sounds like cute. Oh, they're turning tricks. Like,
I
you didn't
managed to
understand
squeeze
English.
these kind
You're
of
like,
things
they're
in
magicians?
to every
You know, like,
conversation we
no,
have.
of a sort. Right, that's-
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, we're going to limit. But I think that's one of the stories. If we're talking about the elite kind of versus everybody else gap,
Maybe.
Everything that
if
gets
they're
created
that
is
concerned about their children.
But you see with
and
everything,
that
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like people promulgating technologies and value systems they don't actually live in.
Right.
And then everybody who is watching is like, I will do that.
Right.
And then those people themselves don't do it.
Watch the entire episode for free.
By the way, every time they have those kind of talks where you're talking about a big tech company like Facebook, Twitter, it doesn't matter what it is, ICQ, they're always coming at it from the perspective of, well, these ones are operating in the bad way and they're doing bad things. And if only these specific companies could stop operating that way, rather than these are well-calculated strategies to turn the most amount of profit, especially out of their users. And in this case, when they have a dying user base, like Facebook usership in North America, for example, has been in the decline for a while. So what's the next step? Are we going to just go the way of MySpace, or are we going to try invent something entirely new, get in front of all this technology, start to make it, something that is accessible by everybody? But this...
You often think about what you should have said in a conversation long after it has taken place. Disagree. That is for people who make mistakes. I'll agree. You are still bothered by mistakes you made a long time ago. Agree.
That was just him contradicting himself in 10 seconds.
This will come down to who can deliver the lower propensity and mid propensity voters.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we will build a ladder to heaven to deliver you the daily news. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are your most humble of clownish jesters. To our lords, Trevor R. and Alexander Thaler, you have our undying fealty. To our knights of the round table, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariana McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Ants Are Still Running the World, Coulter Smith, Tom Groh, Val 9000, Jenna Tal, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Riley and Anna, Omni, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Chronic to Hemphog, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We shall meet you in the tavern, and we raise a drink, and we salute you.